The team behind Pokémon Luminescent Platinum, one of the most exciting mods of a Pokémon game, maybe ever, has just released mind-blowing news. I am not exaggerating when I say that Pokémon ROM Hacking might never be the same again. And odds are, you missed it. I talked to some of the most influential members of this community to help me explain to you, dear stranger online, exactly why the next few years of Pokémon ROM Hacking might be the most revolutionary yet. And to do that, we need to talk about Chibi and awkward Rayquaza. The releases of the Pokémon Gen 4 remakes, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, have been controversial from day one, to say the least. Pokémon has a history of delivering incredibly polished remakes, paying tribute to every aspect of the original games while, actually modernizing them, and expectations were high for Sinnoh. When the first trailer dropped showcasing an almost one-to-one remake of Gen 4, keeping the 2D feel of the original DS games with a chibi design, a lot of people jumped to grab some pitchforks and torches and go on Twitter and do what they do best. And well, what I can say is that there wasn't a lot of love put into these games, Pokémon models and animations were reused again. The following Pokémon mechanic just looked weird, and people have claimed that it was such a direct copy that even some glitches from Diamond and Pearl have moved over to BDSP. Actually, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl include in their code the encounter data for the Nintendo DS feature of GBA's lot encounters, something that absolutely doesn't exist on the Switch. So yeah, very faithful remakes I would say, but honestly, I'm not here to dunk on these games any more than has already been done. I know you have your own opinions on these games, and the internet made sure that theirs was very well heard. But I want to highlight one of the biggest criticism these games had. All the quality of life improvements made by the third Sinnoh game, Pokémon Platinum, were nowhere to be found. The 10th Doctor, Looker wasn't there, the Distortion World wasn't there, and you still had no fire types in Sinnoh. It was baffling to players that the remakes we finally got after 15 years refused to acknowledge the upgrades made in one of the best Pokémon games of all time. And to be honest, that is probably more the fault of Game Freak's creative control than ILCA themselves. Modders have actually found unused animations for the full-scale models such as running and biking, which seems to suggest that the Chibi look was something implemented later. But that's just speculation, and we got what we got. Game Freak and ILCA gave us Gen 4 remakes without giving us Platinum, which doesn't mean we wouldn't get our Platinum remakes. 2 years ago, TTiN made a post on Reddit saying that BDSP modding is popping off. One of our devs, Izuno, is fixing animations that should have been fixed years ago, and shared a seemingly simple video. Salamence fighting Skarmory, and they are both on the ground. Nothing incredible or revolutionary, right? Well, the thing is that when Pokémon made the move to 3D with X and Y, they implemented this thing called Sky Battles, where only winged Pokémon could participate. This means that the idle animations created for them back then were of Pokémon awkwardly hovering in place. And even after Sky Battles were no more, the animations stayed that way in Gen 7, and Gen 8, and Gen 9, and BDSP. Charizard, Gyarados, and yes, Skarmory and Salamence hadn't touched the ground again since 2013. It seems a bit nitpicky, but that's why it's so annoying. It's something tiny, an easy fix, something that the community has been complained about for over a decade now, and has never been heard. The quick patch of giving them their rounded Pokémon Colosseum animations was enough to get the community extremely excited, and saying that this is the kind of thing that Game Freak should have given us. Well, back then I started following Izuno on Twitter shortly after, and it was through there that I kept seeing the incredible graphical upgrades and fixes that this team was doing on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. From importing Pokémon models and animations from other games such as Colosseum and Stadium to adding new, completely custom and unbelievably detailed move animations, adding true scale to the Pokémon in battle, completely customized story events, and, of course, even adding the legendary encounter of Regitube. Well, maybe not all of these are implemented in the current version of Luminescent Platinum, but it just gives you a small glimpse of what can be achieved by modding this game. When you see what the Lumi team has done with the following animations, for example, going back to see how they actually look in the base game just feels flat out wrong. And these are just the cosmetic changes. Myself, I have been playing Lumi on stream for a few weeks now, and I can safely say that there is so much more that makes this game one of the most incredible Pokémon experiences I have ever had. Inspired by Renegade Platinum, the difficulty is amped all the way up, encounters are widely balanced and redistributed throughout the region, you get access to every single Pokémon in the Pokédex, shiny hunting is fun, and the shiny charm actually works, and so many more surprises waiting for you in a game that overflows with attention and care from an engaged fan community. What the Lumi team has accomplished on top of these games is nothing short of amazing, and it impacts gameplay positively in ways I cannot describe. And the big news is that last week, TTiN made this post on the Luminescent Platinum Discord that makes this all the more exciting. They wrote that this might be the biggest piece of news they ever dropped. The news is that they are progressing with the decompiling process in these games, which means that when this is finished, these games, which already look amazing in the hands of independent developers, will become much easier to modify. And everything I just showed you will be just the tip of the iceberg compared to what comes next. I will slow down because I know this is all a little bit technical and might sound a little bit complicated to people like me, a girl whose coding experience is editing the HTML code for my Tumblr page. So I talked to Lumi co-creator, TTiN, to try to explain exactly what this means and why this is so exciting. TTiN told me that the thing that makes BDSP easier to modify when compared to Sword and Shield, Let's Go, and even 3DS titles is that these games were made by ILCA using Unity, the most well-known and widely used game engine in the world. According to them, anything you want to make or do using Unity has 1,000 tutorials for it on YouTube. When the Lumi team first looked at the Unity files for BDSP, most things they needed were basically handed out immediately on a silver platter. The assets could be easily unpacked through tools that already exist and are available online. What this means is that when the team would look at a file for the encounter tables, for example, they would just see a text saying this: Mons number 25, minimum level 5, maximum level 10. From there, Unity just made it very straightforward to edit away and accomplish most of the upgrades that we see today. But throughout the entire Luminescent Platinum project, the files were all still compiled. Actually, more than one person has given me the analogy of baking a cake when explaining what decompiling actually is. Making a mod without a decomp, which is also called binary hacking, is like trying to squeeze whatever you can inside a cake that is already finished. Sure, you might be able to make some cosmetic changes like replacing the icing or adding new decoration, but if you want to change anything inside the cake, then it becomes a problem. It's doable, of course, as the Lumi team has achieved so far, but surely it's hard and complicated and frustrating. Decomp hacking, on the other hand, means you are able now to completely unbake the cake, and then you can experiment with it as much as you'd like, trying out a totally new recipe, switching ingredients, testing it out, and experimenting with different ovens and different temperatures. Full customization at your space-time bending Dr. Manhattan bakery. And that's where we are heading with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. TTiN told me that when modding, the Lumi team would unpack the Unity assets, the ones that were relatively easy to modify. But the files that made up the game's engine had some more complex things in them, and without some very specific software, code was basically untouchable. These modifications were the real heavy lifting for the Lumi team and would eat up a lot of the development time. Small things like adding additional menu options took them weeks. And even with brilliant devs, it was just an incredibly strenuous effort for them. TTiN said, "The biggest plus for the decomp is that all of the engine code will be easily editable. Take, for example, the fact that the game is currently grid-based. Doesn't need to be anymore, because we have full control over the code. The biggest takeaway here is that the goal of the decomp is to take the room FS folder and the exe FS folder and make it into a Unity project. The game becomes clay in the hands of the person working with it, and they are able to add in, change, or edit anything, and I mean anything in the game." I think to fully grasp what this means for the future of Pokémon ROM hacking, we need to go back in time a little bit, because it's not only the technical developments that are exciting me. I think that as a community, we have reached a very good mindset in how we want to approach the changes we want to make in these games. The history of Pokémon ROM hacking has many chapters, successes, and failures, and I was there for mostly all of it. And I think we have finally moved past an awkward adolescence phase to settle into a more mature place. To try and imagine the possibilities of a decompiled BDSP, let's look back at the most successful decomp of a Pokémon game we've ever had. Gen 3. We have had ROM hacks since the internet is a thing. Of everything, really. Pokémon hacks in the 90s used to be much simpler, and one of the biggest uses for them was to just translate games into languages that never got official support from Game Freak. As we just said, just changing the icing on the cake. It's crazy, like, to this day, I have never played an official Pokémon game in my mother language, Portuguese. And when trying to get my little cousin into these games, I had to give him a translated ROM hack. When I was 7, it was the height of Pokémania, I was obsessed with it, and sure, I was going to play it even without understanding a word of English. But it is 2024, and if I want to grab my cousin's attention when he could be playing Roblox or microtransaction iPad Frenzy, I need to give him something that he can at least understand. But yeah, with Gen 1 and Gen 2 in the early 2000s, the ROM hacking scene was still quite small, with some notable exceptions like Pokémon Brown, developed by Pokémon ROM hacking legend Cool Boy Man. First released in 2004 and kept receiving updates almost a decade after. According to Bulbapedia, it was the first hack to completely reinvent the game, with a brand new region and completely new plot. Later editions include an expanded Pokédex, including Pokémon from generations 2, 3, and 4, additional dungeons, and additional plot tweaks. But then came Gen 3 and everything changed. With the internet booming and editing tools getting more and more accessible, the ROM hacking scene exploded. These games were so easy to edit that 9-year-old me created my own ROM hack using the super intuitive software Advanced Map, which lets you change tiles, encounters, and trainers simply by dragging and dropping. I, a mere child, made a ROM hack where all the gym leaders were my middle school teachers, and shared it with the kids in my school. Simpler days. I never had the money to buy a Game Boy Advance, so I, and a lot of people in my country, experienced Gen 3 completely through emulation. I would only get my hands on a physical copy of Pokémon Ruby a decade later. The ROM hacks were bubbling everywhere in these early days, created by people with varying skills regarding game theory and programming, which led to most of them getting abandoned and never finished. It was also a time when a bit of the initial Pokémania had faded, and Pokémon was deemed a little bit too childish, so a lot of hacks tried to get more serious and mature and talk about serious topics. But it was still mostly made by teenagers, so their idea of a mature Pokémon game was making it as edgy as possible with swearing and guns and violence and all that jazz. As a result of that mindset, we were making things like Pokémon My Ass, which I guess is a little bit self-explanatory, and the infamous Pokémon Clover, which is literally a game made by 4chan users trying to be edgy by being racist. But you also get projects like Pokémon Uranium, which matures the story by making it so that every Pokémon has radiation poisoning. And being honest, I have never played Pokémon Uranium, and it does look pretty good. But those kind of dark, almost creepypasta-ish creative choices are a little bit of a turn-off for me, personally. There is also Pokémon Unbound as a very well-praised, well-made ROM hack with a good difficulty spike, a new region, and a really story-driven narrative focusing on the Kalos War. But there are a few elements that didn't click that well for me as well, such as the joke that everybody in the grass gym basically loves weed, or yeah. Like, of course, go and experiment and go wild, it's your game, but I think that I was never that much interested in the more edgy ROM hacks because it's not really what I think a mature game could be. But this deep ground for experimentation, exploration, and eventual decompilation of Generation 3, both with Hoenn and with Kanto, is what has given us classic staples in the community, like Pokémon Naranja, the long-ass retelling of the Orange Islands arc of the Pokémon anime. With a growing player base asking for more challenging games and not being listened to by Game Freak, the community also created the Kaizo series, with Emerald Kaizo being the most notable, providing veteran players and Nuzlockers with a level of challenge that was completely unseen in any main series titles ever or since. Kaizo is simply focused on battling, and that is its design philosophy, having become incredibly popular thanks to YouTubers like AlphaRed and Pokémon Challenges. You also get Pokémon Radical Red, a difficulty mod that managed to cram 9 generations of Pokémon and gimmicks like Terrestrialization, Dynamax, and Mega Evolution inside of a Fire Red ROM. Something that would have been impossible without the decomp. There are also some notable Gen 2 hacks like Pokémon Prism, made by the same developer from Pokémon Brown, the absolutely gorgeous looking Pokémon Coral, and Pokémon Crystal Clear, experimenting with a brand new open world format which we would later see in main series titles. But even though more and more games have been decomp over time, it is undeniable that 90% of all ROM hacking happens in Generation 3 games, even with some later Pokémon games receiving demakes in the Gen 3 engine. All of those hacks were fundamental in exploring the limits of what this medium can do and where this community can bring it. But I think in the last few years, we have reached a mentality that interests me much more than darker plots or just having a bunch of features together in the same game. I feel like more and more we are starting to see more ROM hacks that explore, first and foremost, game design. While the genesis of ROM hacking was carried by passionate fans, now we have really experienced game developers and programmers giving a go at these projects and approaching them from a game design perspective. Focusing more on quality of life improvements and modernization while respecting the design philosophy of the original games. Smith Plays Pokémon's Legacy series immediately comes to mind as an incredible work of updating a 25-year-old game while respecting what it's originally set out to be. Rebalancing fights and movesets, reorganizing encounters in ways that make sense, and just improving the experience that these decade-old games can give us. After working on Crystal Legacy, his team did phenomenal work on Yellow Legacy. They didn't add new Pokémon or crazy gimmicks, but they gave more love to the sprite work, improved movesets, and gave you the chance to catch every available Pokémon in a more thought-out version of Gen 1 that had 3 decades to reflect upon itself. They gave this game a fantastic post-game as well, something that simply did not exist in 1998. I think that this is a much more interesting way to mature and repolish a game, and what they have accomplished is simply unbelievable. They are moving on to do the same game rebalancing with Pokémon Emerald, and I'm very excited to see what comes next. Speaking of Emerald, I cannot talk about the golden age of Pokémon ROM hacks and the infinite possibilities that decompiling a game brings without mentioning the newest update to Pokémon Emerald Rogue. It's a game created by senior gaming engineer Abby Potter, with the original decomp of Pokémon Emerald on GitHub being the basis of the whole project. As TTiN said, Abby was able to take the available decomp code and mold the game like clay. I have also spoken to Abby while writing this script, and she told me that, to put it bluntly, I don't think I would be ROM hacking if it weren't for the Emerald decomp. I've always found binary hacking just a little bit too tedious for my liking. I'm also very much a programmer at heart too. Ask me to knock out a system to let you ride your Pokémon in the overworld? I'll get you the demo tonight. Ask me to make literally a single map? 2 weeks later and I'm still procrastinating. I have been playing version 2.0 of Emerald Rogue for a while, and it is simply unbelievable what was accomplished here. You have a really well-designed gameplay loop, which is accompanied by the most gorgeous sprite work I have ever seen in a Gen 3 hack. I mean, you have overworld encounters, you have overworld shinies in a Generation 3 game. You can play co-op multiplayer in a Generation 3 game. If you put these two side by side, it is hard to believe that we are basically looking at the same game. That is without even mentioning the quality of life improvements, the two most important being that this game has Larry in it, and also, you can give your Pokemon HRT to change their gender. Herbo, Remedy, T. This is the pinnacle of Pokemon games and nothing ever will come close to it. Abby also told me that the decomp of Emerald is the reason why we are getting bolder and more creative Gen 3 hacks right now. That's exactly what we are seeing with Generation 3 now. A massive group of hobbyist devs over at Pret, which is the GitHub decompilation group, work through all of the tedious steps, turning nonsense code into readable and usable code. So now, all of us can pretty much do exactly what we want, at least as far as the GBA allows. And it's not just them either. I think part of the reason Emerald hacks in particular have become so common now is in no small part due to the efforts of RH Hideout, making the Emerald expansion. Again, it's a massive group effort from a bunch of devs implementing all of the modern features into Emerald. So anyone starting a project is absolutely spoiled with getting pretty much everything they could possibly ask for as a base. They can focus purely on their vision and not have to worry about re-implementing the wheel again. We learned a lot from mistakes and from great games in the past 2 decades, and we are currently pushing Gen 3 games to their creative limits. And we are about to do all that again, with 3D models, as soon as BDSP is decompiled. And once this group of independent developers achieves that, there is absolutely no limit to what we, as a community, can create. Other incredible examples of decomp that happened outside of Pokémon can be seen with Super Mario 64 and the Legend of Zelda N64 games, which are currently receiving updates, multiplayer modes, 60 FPS mods that would have made 8-year-old me completely lose it. You look at incredible games like Mario Builder 64, which takes this 30-year-old game as a base and flips it on its head to achieve something undreamable for the Nintendo 64. This is what a decomp can do for a modding community. Incredible freedom to create anything. As for what the future of BDSP could be, in the words of TTiN themselves, if you want to implement a TCG battle system as a little minigame, you can do that. Wanna add in Mystery Dungeon? Sure. Want to completely change it to an open world game that looks and plays like Scarlet and Violet? I mean, if you've got the dev team for it, why not? Seamless multiplayer like Poke MMO? Definitely doable, and Unity has built-in tools for it. When this is finished, there are no limits to what can be done. Unity is the most well-known and widely used game engine in the world. Anything you want to make or do has 1,000 tutorials for it on YouTube. Not only this, but Unity has export options for Windows, Linux, Mac, Android, iOS, and so much more. These fan games would run natively on any of these pieces of hardware at a much smoother frame rate than Switch emulators. The point of Lumi has first and foremost been to create a culture of free and open sharing of both knowledge and assets. We are working very hard on making models from every region of every main character from every main game. Maps, buildings, Pokemon, all of that. Anything that's in our ROM hack is free for the community to use, and we are trying to promote this culture in BDSP modding in general. Imagine the craziest, most creative team playing with those ideas we just talked about and much more. And the best part, you wouldn't even need an emulator to run it. You could do it directly on your phone or your computer. It's really exciting. Of course, it is definitely a much more difficult task to create these mods in 3D than in sprite work. It might be infinitely customizable, but you are going to need a team of much more experienced developers and artists to get those projects going. I don't expect dozens of different games to start popping up right away, or for our GBA hack ROMs to be left aside. They are still going to be here with us for a long time and receiving incredible new additions, new Emerald Rogues and new Emerald Legacies. But I do believe the future of ROM hacks based on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl is coming very fast. It is a little bit ironic that these games, hated by so many people at their release, will leave such an incredible legacy for the community. And some very well-known GBA modders have already said to be interested in starting new creations after the decomp. And it's gonna be amazing. Okay, if you are a developer experienced with Unity, the Lumi team needs your help to make all of these a reality. If you don't know anything about programming, but you have a friend who does, send this video to them. Right now. I'm waiting. Did you send it? Lovely, I knew I could count on you, dear stranger online. So, according to the Lumi team, they are looking for some of the brilliant minds in our community to assist them. The things they are currently looking for are someone to assist in ripping resources.assets. This will involve editing the open source project Asset Ripper to help them make a program to rip BDSP's assets for the Unity project. People to assist in the decomp efforts. Reading C++ and writing C/Unity code are what you need for this one. Shader code decompilers or writers. A pretty big ask, but they know that Asset Ripper is working on a shader decomp project. Alternatively, they could reverse engineer some shaders to look the same. And lastly, people proficient in WWise. This is BDSP's audio engine, and to be quite honest, they don't know a whole lot about it. Also, They are working on their newest project, Re-Illuminated, to finally add the National Dex and the Distortion World and a lot of groundbreaking features that will be announced very soon. I will make sure to bring you the news as soon as we have some. And lastly, I have something personal to say. You might have noticed that this little channel is not so little anymore. 3 months ago, I was premiering videos to 500 views, and now I am extremely happy to have gotten over 10,000 subscribers on this little YouTube journey of mine. I'm extremely grateful to everybody who has been sharing and engaging and giving me the chance to build a small community of dear strangers online who are also interested in having queer and marginal conversations about the things we like. You have really joined me as we sail the deep and treacherous waters of the YouTube algorithm, and honestly, we are doing it amazingly, and I'm forever grateful. I just moved into my new apartment and I wanted to wait until everything was pretty and decorated, but I couldn't hold it. I just missed talking to you all. Right now, I am writing 2 scripts at the same time. This one comes first, and it's very Pokémon-y, but there is also a very important and personal video about gender and mental health coming very soon, so keep an eye open, turn on the notifications. And if you are new here, make sure to do what you usually do, like and subscribe, but most importantly, share this video to help us find some Unity developers for Lumi. Send it to your favorite Pokemon creator and let's get the word about the decomp of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl out there. We can help bring these fan projects to the next level. These independent developers have put so much work into it, and they are doing this all for free and for us. Let's help as much as we can. And lastly, if you want to learn more about Luminescent Platinum, I have been live streaming my playthroughs on this channel. I will link the playlist with the VODs right here, somewhere. Go check it out. And I hope to see you back on this channel soon.